This is a sports catastrophe production. Hey there, hello there. It's Jeff Cutter Gunn and welcome you to yet another On This Day video. And today we take a look at Babe Ruth. Yes, that's him, and that's him in a Red Sox uniform because on this day, January 3rd, in 1920, over a century ago, he was dealt from the Boston Red Sox to the New York Yankees for $125,000, which is still huge in most circles today, so that the Boston Red Sox owner, Harry Frazees, could basically do a Broadway play. But it's not all true. So anyway, Babe Ruth was one of the most pure hitters around in his younger days. Born in Baltimore, near where Camden Yards is currently, Babe Ruth was a very good player, and he was a strong hitter and all that. He went to a industrial school for boys, and then basically seemed to be okay. However, the owner of the Philadelphia Athletics sent Connie Mack, the legendary manager of the A's, to Baltimore to pick up Babe Ruth and put him in the farm system. And in the Philadelphia farm system, he was good. He was a strong hitter, and he even hit his first professional home run in the International League in Toronto in 1914. He didn't play for the Toronto team, but he played for, I forget what team he played for. I would say Baltimore, but I'm wrong. Anyway, unfortunately, the Philadelphia A's in the time basically had good players, and then when the cash dried up, they had to sell them to keep the franchise afloat. That happened a lot in their lives in the 1910s and 20s and 30s for the Philly A's. They were more well known for basically buying high and then selling low, if you will. Buying low, selling high. Basically, they had some great World Series runs, but by the time they lost money and all that, they had to sell the players so that they could finance themselves. 1916 would be no exception, as Babe Ruth was sold to the Boston Red Sox for cash to keep their franchise afloat. And basically, in 1916, they suffered a whale of a season, one of the worst in Major League history, of 116 losses. So, Babe Ruth was now a Boston Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox were a very decent team. Heck, their first 5 World Series appearances, they won 1903, 1912, 1915, 1916, 1918. Babe Ruth would be responsible for the last 3. So Babe Ruth basically played for Boston. But people forget that Babe Ruth was a decent pitcher, a decent left-handed pitcher at that. Which is strange because, like Babe Ruth, everyone knows about his hitting exploits, but what about his pitching exploits? Yes, Babe Ruth was a very strong pitcher. Heck, in 1916, in Game 2 of the World Series against the Brooklyn Dodgers, he outdueled one Sherry Smith in a 12-inning game and gave the Red Sox the win. He was a very decent pitcher, one of the best left-handers ever. All that. He could hit the ball too, but he was mostly a pitcher first mentality. And then they decided to put him to the outfield because they think that his power will help the team offensively instead of just being the pitcher and all that. And so he basically started doing quite well in the outfield and all that. He still pitched quite a while, but he wasn't that. He didn't get that many games as a pitcher. So basically, Babe Ruth is basically Babe Ruth in 1918 is what Shohei Ohtani was in 2020. Basically a hitter and a pitcher, too. Babe Ruth was great as a pitcher. In 1917, though, he did have a temper tantrum after he allegedly thought he struck out a Washington batter, but it was called ball 4. He hit the plate umpire, Brick Owens, who ejected him. Ernie Shore came up in relief, and he actually did Babe Ruth a solid by getting every batter out, including the runner on base that got picked off. So basically, Shore had all 27 batters. It's not a perfect game. It's a combined no-hitter because Babe Ruth was the starter. So anyway, and it was not a combined perfect because, well, Babe Ruth walked the guy. It's a no-hitter. So anyway, Babe Ruth was Unfortunately, Babe Ruth had one big problem: his massive ego. And no, this is not a birthday thing about Babe Ruth, because if I were to talk about Babe Ruth on his birthday, I would probably be talking about the New York Yankees era. But I'm not talking about the Yankees era in this video. This is the Boston Red Sox era. So unfortunately, Babe Ruth had a massive ego. He wanted more money. And basically, Ed Barrow, who was the Boston manager and who actually managed to keep Babe Ruth in line, actually said, fine, okay, you got it. Unfortunately, Babe Ruth just wanted more and more money. He became very greedy and all that. Boston refused to give him much of a contract. Well, they gave him a 1 year contract, but Babe Ruth would say, why am I worth this much? And besides, he hit 9 home runs in a season, which actually was the major league record for a long time. Because in baseball, before 1920, baseballs were really were harder to hit, in a sense. They were made from different synthetic material, or I don't think they were synthetic anyway. But anyway, yeah. Once World War One, pardon, ended, basically the live ball era started, and basically home runs were hit at a higher pace and all that. But Babe Ruth was basically feeding his ego. In 1919, he actually quit the team mid-season and played for an industrial team because he didn't want to pitch. He wanted to play outfield. He didn't want to pitch. So basically, he went to an industrial team. Unfortunately, that team refused to let him play outfield, so Babe stormed off back to Boston. I think Babe Ruth thought his value was a hitter, not a pitcher, which was true. I mean, in the era that the American League had pitchers hit for themselves before 1973, he was a great hitting pitcher. But then again, Babe Ruth wanted to be in the outfield, and he wanted to play every day in the outfield. He wanted to hit balls and help his team win games. Unfortunately, his ego was basically the last straw. When ESPN Classic did top 5 reasons you can't blame series, they did one on Babe Ruth leaving the Red Sox. You can't blame the Red Sox for getting rid of Babe Ruth. Basically, it was mostly his ego that basically ruined him and all that. And he kept demanding more and more money. Boston did not like that and decided to dump him off. But who would have the money? Now, at that time, the American League had some infighting. There was a group of 8 teams in the American League. 5 of them were part of one little group, and 3 were part of another group. So basically, the 3 teams that were in the camp to get rid of the American League president basically were the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the White Sox. So basically, because of the camps, if you will, they didn't know what to do. Boston had 2 trading partners, the Yankees and the White Sox. Of course, this was the year that the White Sox threw the World Series because of the Black Sox scandal. So anyway, the Chi Sox almost gave Joe Jackson to Boston and some cash for Babe Ruth. It would have been amazing to see Joe Jackson on the Red Sox, and then the Black Sox scandal happening, and then Boston getting gypped, and then the White Sox had Babe Ruth, and he was clean. The White Sox could have done much better rebuilding after Babe Ruth, but with all the infighting and all that, he basically needed to do something, and the plan was to dump him off. So the Red Sox decided to dump him off, and the Yankees were the best option. Now, if I have a book explaining it, there's no guarantee I have that book by Rob Nair. I think I don't have that book. I think I tossed it out. Although I don't know why I tossed it out. I think I did. I think I tossed it out. I had 2 Rob Nair books, but I got rid of one because when I picked up the baseball, the top players of all time or something like that, this guy did the all-time lineups. I decided that it was not worth keeping the book. And I don't have that book anymore. Shoot. Anyway, because I remember Rob Nair writing a book and saying that basically with those 2 camps, the Red Sox only option to get rid of Babe Ruth would be sending him to the Yankees. So the Yankees did, and the Yankees had money back in the day. They were a crappy team. They didn't even make a World Series before Babe Ruth came by. And so basically, they gave him $125,000. The Yankees could have sent the Red Sox players, but the Red Sox just wanted cash. I mean, the Yankees offered players too, but no. The Yankees said, no, we want money. Red Sox were like, we need money. We don't need players. How wrong was Frazees? Basically, Frazees was a Broadway producer. And contrary to popular belief, the Broadway play No No Nanette was not financed by the Babe Ruth sale. It was found out that although the play did take place in 1920s, it actually started in 1926, 6 years after the Babe Ruth sale. And basically, it was for a production called Our Lady Friends. Basically, the non-musical version of No No Nanette. No No Nanette had a lot of musical numbers. Our Lady Friends on Broadway had no musical numbers. So basically, it was a Broadway play. It was just a play, not a musical. That's one common misconception, is that it wasn't for No No Nanette, even though it came by later on. So basically, Babe Ruth was the ingredient the Yankees needed. And so basically, his popularity got the Yankees to think, we need a new stadium. Instead of sharing the Polo Grounds with the New York Giants, not the football team, the baseball team, they decided to build a stadium across the way from Polo Grounds. A nice stadium, Yankee Stadium. And Babe Ruth christened Yankee Stadium in 1923 with a home run in the first ever game against, who else? Boston. Basically, he was hitting home runs left, right, and center. Boston was struggling and all that. Boston would struggle for a long time. This is about the curse of the Bambino. So basically, Boston seemed cursed. These events happened before people said there's the curse of the Bambino. I'll explain more later. So in 1946, Boston got themselves in the World Series, got up to a Game 7 against the St. Louis Cardinals. Eno Slaughter, a very decent hitter, lined one into the gap in the outfield. No, sorry. Slaughter got a base hit, and then I forget who the guy was who hit that long drive. But anyway, Slaughter went around the bases, and his mad dash, as they call it, helped the Cardinals win Game 7. People blamed Johnny Pesky for that because Johnny Pesky had double clutched the ball in that World Series. I said 46, right? Yeah. But Johnny Pesky would not have had the chance to get Slaughter at home plate, even if he was throwing right off the bat. Anyway, so Johnny Pesky was blamed, but it wasn't his fault. Boston just slid off. Even though Ted Williams was one of the best pure hitters of all time, Boston just couldn't get it together. They had a few chances to win the American League pennant, including 1949 when they had a one-game lead on the New York Yankees with 2 games left. Unfortunately for Boston, both games were against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, and Boston lost both. Boston was just an okay team that basically couldn't get themselves out of a rut. Yastrzemski replaced Ted Williams in left field. Basically, Boston was screwed. Jackie Jansen, who was MVP for the Red Sox, actually left the Red Sox to go to leave baseball because of his fear of flying, although that's a solid reason. However, things were starting to hit ahead. 1967, Boston was 100-1 odds to win the American League. Now remember, before 1969, you had to win the league, the American League and National League, to make the World Series. Only one playoff round. So the Red Sox were in a 14 fight with the Twins, the White Sox, and the Tigers. On the final day, the Red Sox beat the Twins, meaning that Detroit would have to sweep their doubleheader with the California Angels to force a one-game playoff. But the Angels won the second game of the doubleheader, so Boston, late at night, got their pennant. They took on the St. Louis Cardinals, the powerful St. Louis Cardinals, who had some players from the 1967 franchise just died in 2020. I'm talking Lou Brock and Bob Gibson in particular. But the Red Sox hung tough. They got a Game 7 again, at home against the St. Louis Cardinals. Sadly, though, Bob Gibson was dominant. And all that. And the Red Sox lost Game 7. But it was huge. They took the powerful Cardinals to Game 7. St. Louis would fall in a Game 7 the next year to the Detroit Tigers, which is kind of weird. Although a lot of people blame Kurt Flood. So anyway, the Red Sox went back to mediocrity. Worse off is that their big bat of Tony Congliero, who is supposed to be this great slugger who from Massachusetts, actually got beamed by an accidental fastball from Jack Hamilton of the Angels. Basically, his career suffered after that. And he ended up dying of a stroke in 1992 at 45, I think. So anyway, Boston was also ranked. But in 1975, they actually surprised themselves, especially in the ALCS. Now, this is when, the American National League were both split into two divisions. So Boston would take on the three-time defending World Series champion Oakland Athletics. And surprisingly, not only did Boston beat the three-time defending World Series champs, they swept them in 5 games. This, of course, was before the LCS became a best of 7 in 1985, mostly because the Cubs choke against the Padres. I think baseball wanted to reward the Cubs. Thanks a lot, because that screwed the Blue Jays, because if the Jays were in the best of 5 in 85, they would have went to the World Series against the Cardinals. Maybe we would have lost, but at least they would have made it. So anyway, like I'm saying, so Boston swept them. Now they might take on the big red machine of the Cincinnati Reds, who also lost a legend in 2020, Joe Morgan. So basically, Boston and Cincy were playing good games. Louis Tion was basically pitching a lot in games and basically actually did well for himself. Unfortunately, Cincy won a game on what was supposed to be an interference call on Ed Armbruster interfering with Carlton Fisk's throw, and basically the backlash created by NBC's Kurt Gowdy, alleged backlash, got sponsors to basically pressure Bowie Kuhn to basically tell NBC that to boot Kurt Gowdy from their broadcasts because of the controversy and all that. Now, whether it's true or not, Kurt Gowdy was not part of NBC or any other network broadcasting baseball games after 1975. It was Joe Garagiola who came in to play. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. I think Bowie Kuhn was basically a company man. Cunt. So anyway, so the Red Sox, 7 games. Had a 7-game series in 75 against the Reds. The funny thing is that Game 6 was actually held 3 days later than it was supposed to because of rains in the Boston area. But that actually was good for baseball because it got baseball talking. It got people coming to Boston and, doing more interviews with the players and all that, getting to know the players better, and basically gave the World Series a Super Bowl feeling for the first time in a while, Pete Rose said. Game 6 was magical. I mean, the Reds had a 6-3 lead in the 8th inning when Dwight Evans, was it Dwight Evans? I can't remember. No, pardon. Bernie Carbo came up to the plate to pinch hit and hit a 3-run home run to dead center, tying the game at 6. And then Dwight Evans made a fantastic catch in the 11th inning and doubled off the runner. And then here comes Carlton Fisk off Pat Darcy. He hits a run to left field. Is it fair? Is it foul? It just sneaks inside the foul pole. And the Boston Red Sox win Game 6 and force Game 7. However, the lasting image is Carlton Fisk's waving his hands and all that. Now, that wasn't really supposed to be shown, but it was shown because the NBC cameraman, Lou Gerard, was distracted by a rat with him having the camera out the green monster, off the green monster. Basically, out of the green monster would be the left field fence with his camera, his left field fence, to follow the path of the ball from the batter's box over the monster. But he was so scared by a rat that he kept it on Fisk, and his emotional waving of the arms and all that was huge. It became legendary as the first major reaction shot in sports and basically changed sports landscapes, sports replay landscapes forever. However, Boston choked Game 7 away and the Reds won. Boston would go back to being decent. 78 was supposed to be the year they would get to the World Series or even the LCS to that matter. Unfortunately, though, they ended up tied with the New York Yankees after blowing a 14-game lead in the division. Yankees won in Boston thanks to Bucky freaking Dent. Now, contrary to popular belief, that was not the winning run with Bucky Dent's 3-run home run off Mike Torres. It was the 8th inning, another Yankee home run gets overshadowed, and that was Reggie Jackson hitting it to deep center field to make it 5-3 Yankees. Boston would make it 5-4, but couldn't tie it. So yeah, the Boston Red Sox were not that well received. However, in 1986, a new crop of Red Sox guys, even a few Texas Longhorns came by. That and Calvin Girardi and Rocket Roger Clemens. Clemens was on the ball, 24-4 that year. He got a 20 strikeout game. In fact, his first loss was to my beloved Toronto Blue Jays on July 2nd, 1986, in Boston, of all places. Boston just believed themselves. They had a very decent team. Rich Gedman at catcher, Bill Buckner at first, Marty Barrett at second, Spike Owen at shortstop, Wade Boggs at third, in the outfield of Jim Rice, Tony Armas, Dave Henderson, and also Dwight Evans. With great pitching by Clemens, Oil Can Boyd, Giraldi, Bob Stanley, and I would say Bob Knepper, but I'm wrong. The funny thing about the 1986 Red Sox team is that they had Tom Seaver on their team. And he nearly pitched in the World Series against the Mets. A little bit of a spoiler, but I think everyone knows that in 1986, the Red Sox went to the World Series. Red Sox faced the Angels in LCS. Everyone knows the story. They were down 3-1. They were almost taken out in Game 5, but Donnie Moore threw a terrible splitter at Dave Henderson, who hit a home run to give Boston the lead, which Boston would eventually win in the 11th inning. And then in Game 6 and 7, the Angels had nothing left. The 1986 Red Sox would actually hear something about the curse of the Bambino after Babe Ruth being sold from the Red Sox and Yankees, helping the Yankees have a dynasty. But Boston didn't feel the curse. 2 games in New York, 2 games in front. So they're up 2-0. Boston won a game in Boston and to take a 3-2 series lead. However, Game 6 would turn out to be a classic one for all the wrong reasons, if you will. Now, a lot of people say that, everyone knows the Bill Buckner miscue, but did you know that Bill Buckner was actually spooked in the first inning of the game while at bat? Reason being is that a parachutist by the name of Michael Sergio, and yes, I looked it up, actually parachuted into Shea Stadium and was very close to Bill Buckner in the batter spots. Sergio got lots of community service and a major fine, but it could have been more dangerous. So anyway, that was weird. However, Buckner was not getting people across the plate with his hitting. Buckner was not hitting well. And worst of all, his fielding sucked because he had tendon problems and he had to wear high top shoes. And all that. The Red Sox did manage to take a 4-2 lead into the bottom of the 10th, thanks to a home run by Dave Henderson, who could have been a hero twice over. However, the Mets, even though the first 2 batters went out, kept getting long singles and all that. Gary Carter scored to make it 4-3, and then Mookie Wilson came to the plate with Ray Knight on second. With Kevin Mitchell, yes, that Kevin Mitchell of the 1989 NL MVP fame for the Giants, on third base. Bob Stanley was brought in because Giraldi was struggling. Stanley threw a terrible pitch to Wilson, and basically the wild pitch got the Mets the tie. So now they had to get rid of Mookie and then hope for the best in the 11th inning. Sadly, though, Mookie hit a slow ball that Bill Buckner was trying to cover, but with his high top shoes, he couldn't cover it. And he hustled because Mookie Wilson is a fast runner. Ball goes between Buckner's legs, and here comes Knight with the winning run. And the Mets win Game 6. Game 7 would take place a day later than normal because of a rainstorm. So Boston decided to go with Bruce Hurst instead of Oil Can Boyd for Game 7. Because Bruce Hurst was supposed to be the World Series MVP before the Mets comeback. Unfortunately, though, Hurst didn't really have his best stuff, and the Boston bullpen imploded, especially in the 8th inning. Red Sox lose Game 7 to the Mets. And then a lot of people were angry with Chris Bambino. Poor Bill Buckner. Basically, his home fans didn't want him. So basically, Buckner left the team for the California Angels, I think, in 87. And then in 1990, he was brought back, and he actually had an inside-the-park home run against the Angels, which was amazing. But fans in Boston and New England in general couldn't forgive him. Boston had a few World Series aspirations in the 90s and 2000s, especially Pedro Martinez dueling Roger Clemens, Red Sox Yankees a couple times, but coming up on the wrong end of it. However, 2004 would be the year to break this stupid skit. The Red Sox swept the Angels in Game 3 of the ALDS, League Division Series, of course. I know that for a fact because hours after David Ortiz hit a walk-off home run over the Green Monster to send Boston to the next round, I ended up getting appendicitis and having to go to the hospital. While I was at the hospital / resting at home on my parents' farm, the Red Sox sucked. They lost the first 3 games while I was in when I wasn't in Kitchener, and then I got to go home, like my home in Kitchener. I was cleared to get better. So basically, I got better, and then I went to I had to go back to college. I was gone for a week because of illness, and then Boston started to come back. David Ortiz his home run in the 12th inning, Game 4. And then Game 5, Ortiz with a base hit to score the way he runs it forced Game 6. And then Game 6, Boston's bloody red sock of Kurt Schilling, who was fantastic and all that. And then Game 7, Boston crushed the Yankees 10-3. It shouldn't have happened like that. So Boston got to the World Series against the St. Louis Cardinals, their old rivals. Team that put the 46 and 67 losses on them. However, Boston in a crazy Game 1, thanks to my unsung hero Mark Bellhorn, won that series with that game with a 2-run home run. Boston ended up taking a 3-0 series lead into Game 4. Pedro was on the mound. No, Pedro wasn't on the mound. Someone else had to be on the mound. I don't think Pedro was on the mound. But Boston scored a few runs quickly in the first inning, and then they had a 3-0 lead on the Cardinals, and then Renteria, Tapper back to Falk. Falk flipped it to first to Doug Mankiewicz, and the Boston Red Sox are your World Series champions. And Boston and the baseball world went nuts. What's crazy about that is that was just the start of a streak. Boston has won 3 more World Series, 2007, 2013, and 2018, without dropping one. Since 2004, every time they've been in the World Series, those 3 years I just mentioned, they won. And it was like, what the heck is going on? But yeah, the Boston Red Sox have won the last 4 World Series. It's strange. Boston won their first 5 World Series appearances, lost their next 4, and then they ended up winning their next 4. So they're 9-4, and they're on streaks. That's kind of creepy. So anyway, Chris Bambino been broken, and Red Sox fans can rest easy. And thankfully, the Chicago Cubs got their World Series drought ended in 2016. But that's a story for another time. Anyway, this is Jeff Diamond. Adieu.